Service Power Plan Network. Oh my gosh, friends, I bet you are still sleeping off the tryptophan and the turkey and the mashed potatoes and stuffing and whatever was in your Thanksgiving dinner. Hopefully you got to spend it with people who you care about and who you trust and who you feel safe with. Welcome to my favorite night of the week, Monday night, where we interview another person in our industry who has taken really cool steps and done pretty awesome things and gets to lead, and we get to learn from and listen to. And this week it's Charlie Souhrada with NAFEM. He has been with NAFEM for, I think, just about 20 years. And we'll talk to him and hear his story, and you can pick his brain. Don't forget a couple things. First, every person we talk to on these live conversations, we do them live for a couple of reasons. One, so that you can engage and that you can ask questions, because I know there's things that you want to know, questions you have that I maybe didn't think of, and I want you to be able to put them in here. Number two, when we do these live, it's a way for us all to connect. We can all sort of be in, Brandon, in a virtual way, in the same place at the same time, having the same experience. That mattered to me at one point in my life, and so hopefully it offers something to you. Have that. Next, if you've got a notepad and pen, maybe there's a little journal or something that you take notes in for all these conversations. Charlie inevitably has things in his story, things he's experienced, walked through, learned, and will share tonight that you might need for your story. So I would encourage you to take some notes, write a few things down, and then if you hear anything that moves you, start applying it in your own life and watch yourself grow and take new heights, all that kind of stuff. So those are my offerings. Let's go find the man, the myth, the legend, Charlie.
Jason.
Yo, brother.
Nice beard.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's looking sharp.
Thanks. I'm not sure how long it's going to stay, but I appreciate it. I'm noticing, the gray comes in different areas when you regrow it after a few years. And have you done a beard before?
No, I have not, nor have I really thought that I could carry it off.
So maybe someday we'll have a beard off. Josh Callahan's in the house. What is up, Josh? Josh, I'm trying to think if I've ever seen you with a beard. Josh is a VP of sales at CalMill. I can't recall, but if you have, Josh, let us know and I want pictures.
And a NAFEM board member.
Yes, he is. In fact, I think you're going to see Josh next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. NAFEM board meeting. Where is that? Chicago, where you guys are?
In Chicago. We're meeting in person. Isn't that cool?
Awesome. That is so rad. I hope that board meeting goes great. Charlie, okay. Yep. First of all, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
An hour. I think we're going to have a blast. You're the VP of Regulatory and Technical Affairs for NAFEM, none of which I understand what any of those words mean other than NAFEM. I understand that. But before you fill us in on what that role is, well, actually, tell us what that role is. What do you do?
My role is I am the lead staff person for NAFEM's government relations, put simply. And we'll get into that a little bit, but that's in essence what it is. It's a role that didn't exist about 5 years ago, and we created it because NAFEM members needed a voice in Washington or state and local matters. And so that's my job, is to try and figure out how we can get all those voices together and make some noise and make some good things happen, or to mitigate the amount of pain that might be coming down the road.
Yeah, I love it. What's your here? I'm going live. Oh, Shannon Solomon's in the house. Yo, Shannon. Shannon is the Director of Nutrition at Aurora Public Schools in Aurora, Colorado. I think they're the fourth largest district here in Colorado.
Yeah,
welcome,
yeah,
Shannon. Okay, Charlie, what's your journey? This is a role that was created 5 years ago. How did you get to where you are?
Yeah, it's a kind of a circuitous road, because I didn't train as a government relations person. I actually started at Marshall Fields in Chicago. After graduating college, there weren't many things to do in Iowa. So it was a big recession. So I started in the management training program at Fields and actually met my wife there. I was promised an opportunity to move into a communications role. And 4 months later, I became the editor of corporate communications for Marshall Fields, which at the time was like a 12-store chain throughout the Midwest, Illinois, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Texas. And it was a great job, lots of fun. I got to pursue my creativity and do all sorts of interesting things. Like one Christmas, I played Santa Claus in Cozy Cloud Cottage just to see what that was like. I followed the visual merchandisers around, and I understood what fashion trends were going on and why, and how we sold things and how consumer demand racked up. And so that was kind of cool. So after doing that for a few years, I was recruited to become college relations manager. And what that means is that that was really kind of a marketing and sales job. I had to understand how key recruits wanted to start their careers and what were some of the drivers that they were looking for, and to try and match those desires with what fields had to offer. Yeah. So it was kind of an interesting job. It required a lot of organization and planning, and especially during the heavy recruiting months, which usually were from October through November, and then again in March through April. And during those months, I'd be in the office I'd be out on the road on Sunday through Friday, and then in the office on Saturday, and then do it all again. And so it was ridiculously intense. And then you bring them in for tours and whatnot. And in 1990, Fields was purchased by Dayton Hudson, which later became Target. And rather than move to Minneapolis, I took a severance package and started with Smith Buckland on June 11th, 1990. My first client was NAFEM. And I worked in the marketing communications department underneath Dee Flynn, who now serves as executive vice president of NAFEM. So Dee and I have worked together for about 30 years on NAFEM. So together we probably have about 70 plus years of service to the association and the industry, which I think is really pretty remarkable and something I take a lot of pride in. So initially I worked on the show marketing, and I did lots of interesting stuff in that role. And eventually I added all sorts of administration things like CFSP marketing and industry relations. So I did a lot of those things. And then in 1999, I was recruited by a business and marketing firm to take on a role where I would help market trade shows. And so I literally put my office supplies and my career on a hand truck, and I rolled it across Michigan Avenue in Chicago to this firm that was directly across the street from Smith Buckland. I worked there for a couple of years as an account supervisor, VP, et cetera. And then there was a downturn, and the firm took a haircut in 2001, and I lost my job. So I was out of work for a couple of months, and started with another firm, ironically in the same building, 2 floors above. And so I just put my stuff on a hand truck and took the elevator up to the next floor and started working there. And around that time, 9/11 had happened, and Dee Flynn called me, and Dee and NAFEM had left Smith Buckland. NAFEM was now a standalone association, which meant it was running as its own business. And Dee said, "Hey, do you want to come back to work for NAFEM?" So I was in a position where I had to make a choice. Do I want to continue to do what I was doing, which was be the account dude for Ingersoll Rand? I was doing Ingersoll Rand a portfolio of their products like club car, golf cars, kryptonite locks, and another name that you might know, Bobcat heavy equipment. So I was doing all that, and I decided, you know what? I really want to go back and work with those guys because I really love the industry. So I chose NAFEM. And on February 2nd, 1990, I started at NAFEM. Again, it was a standalone association, and I was the membership director of member services, which is kind of a fancy name for whatever needs doing, you figure out how to do it. I was responsible for research and technical affairs and some government relations and a lot of show responsibilities. I had a lot of special projects on the show. And then in 2016, the NAFEM board made a strategic decision to expand the government relations effort at NAFEM. And they gave that role to me. And the position, like we said earlier, didn't exist 5 years ago. There's really nothing like it in the equipment and supplies industry from an association standpoint. So my job is to try and represent all 600 member companies equally, which is sometimes difficult because you consider that there are approximately 750 different product categories or products that our members make. And our job is to help bring their voices to people who need to hear that. And I'm proud of our contributions in this arena. We've really done a great job. We've got a lot to learn, but it's been a fantastic ride, and it's really enjoyable. So that's kind of my career journey.
Charlie, I love it. Here's my first question. When you went back to NAFEM, did you get there via hand truck, or did you have to like put all your stuff in an actual car and drive somewhere?
You know what? I put my stuff in a car because the firm I was working for, BBDS, which doesn't exist anymore, by the way, was about 1.5 miles away. I figured I've had my entire adult career in roughly a 2.5-3 mile radius. So it's not bad.
Kind of cool. You get used to the commute, I guess. You figure out the best way to get there.
Yeah, apparently I love Chicago, and I like the loop.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a lot of questions about what you do. When you are going to Washington and advocating on behalf of those 600 NAFEM members,
yeah,
I got a couple questions. Are you in, House members and senators and, their offices talking to them? Are those the people you're talking to? Or are you talking to different lobbyists? Like who is your reach to?
All of the above. It depends on the issue and who we're talking to. In many cases, we are talking to agency staff members. So if we're going to go meet with the Department of Energy or the Environmental Protection Agency, and typically those are the two groups that we meet with most frequently, we're talking with staff members. If we're going to talk to someone on the Hill from a congressional, either a congressperson or a senator, we're talking staff to staff. And usually those staff people are disarmingly young and incredibly smart. So you've got to be able to mind your P's and Q's because you can take them for granted, or you can underestimate their skills, I suppose, and their influence. So we've got to be prepared, be buttoned up. Every once in a while, we do talk to the person themselves. And in those cases, we usually get a few minutes. So you've got to make your point quickly and get in and get out. And so that happens. We also meet with a lot of other associations that have or share a lot of the same issues. For example, I'll go meet with Americans for Free Trade, which is a group of free traders, and their intent is to try and remove tariffs. So we work with them, or we work with AHAM, the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers, or AHRI. Our scope has expanded a lot through this role, and that provides a lot of value back to the membership, and something that speaks well of the association and the direction that the board carved out.
I would think. Louise O'Sullivan is in the house. Louise, hi. NAFEM is so lucky to have Charlie.
Yeah. Love Louise. One of my great honors in my NAFEM career was helping escort her up to the stage to get the Billy, the William Carpenter Award. So she's a very important lady in my life. So I appreciate her.
Louise, we're glad you're here. Deirdre Flynn, D. Flynn, yes, we are, she says.
Thanks, D.
Oh, D, love it. When you're doing what you do on behalf of NAFEM, we know there's the five, we used to call them the five families. I don't know that they call them that anymore, but you've got the reps, and you've got the distributors, and you've got the service agents, and you've got everybody's got a stake in what you're doing in Washington. Everyone's tied into what you, the effects that you have as you're out there educating and trying to make changes and advocating for manufacturers. How often do the five different groups, in our industry associations call you and say, Charlie, what are you working on? Here's what we want to have happen as well. Or I don't know if that's something that happens a lot or not, but I figure everyone's out to win together.
Well, you're absolutely right. We're all out to win together. And that's part of what this role is to try and bring all these voices together. A lot of the five families do meet, and they meet from an executive director level. So Dee has conversations with every single one of those groups on a frequent basis. Yeah. And so we take those initiatives, or the things that we're working on, to the five family meetings and say, NAFEM is working on this. We'd love to have your involvement. And in many cases, we reach out to them independently of the five family meetings and say, this issue is important. You really need to pay attention, because if it hurts one of us, it goes back to an old saying, if you bleed, I bleed, same thing. So we share a lot of commonalities.
That's awesome. I love the way that everybody communicates and is staying in this together. I couldn't also help but think the five families sounds like kind of awesome. Like, I'm trying to think of the phrase, but I hope sometime, D, I know you're watching. Do you guys have like five families meeting where like there's no main entrance, have like a secret knock, secret code to get things? Because that feels five families appropriate, just for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what you love about your job now. When they decided to create this position, what made you excited about it? What do you love most about what you do?
Well, I think what's fun about it and what I really like about it is that we can make an impact and we can help smaller members. And again, a reminder, about 50% of NAFEM members are small companies. We can help those small companies bring their voices to Washington in a way that they couldn't, because we can bring all those voices together and make a louder noise. And that makes an impact, especially when you're talking about helping people who are trying to get other people employed in an area that doesn't have a whole lot of jobs. So it makes a difference. And that's really what's fun. We've got an incredible team back at NAFEM headquarters, and all of us work together with some contractors, of course, to help make all this happen. But the team itself is astounding, and can't say enough about all the work that they do. I'm really proud to call them my colleagues. So it's not just what I do; it's what all of us collectively do. I just happen to be the guy out front. That's all.
I love it. It's so much more fun to do it as a team, and I think what I hear in your answer is it like we all want to make a difference in some way. In some capacity, we all want to matter and affect things for good. And I love that you're doing that and you notice it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you a goal setter?
Yeah. Well, sometimes. I do use goals as a measuring stick, but I'm not really religious about it. Yeah. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but I do find that I'm good at setting a goal and sticking to it, because I'm someone who's persistent, and I think that's one of the traits that may set me apart, is that I'm very persistent, or I'm dedicated to a task, which means that goal setting is something that I do without really thinking about it. I had to really scrub my brain to think about a goal that I did. And I'm kind of going back to college when I was president of a fraternity. And one of our goals, I helped bring this fraternity back on campus. And one of our goals was to move into a house within a year. And so I developed a plan, and we were able to do that within 8 months. And granted, we moved into a rented house, but it changed the way that we viewed ourselves and the way we worked together as a group. We approached it as a business standpoint, or as a business function, as opposed to just a brotherhood thing. And it worked. And it taught me a lot about how to lead a group of people. So I do set goals, and I've done it for a long time, but I don't really think about it too much. It's just a matter of saying, okay, this is something that I want to do or want to accomplish, but I don't sit there and think, okay, this is a goal for me.
Right. You're not putting them on your, on your wall in front of you to remind yourself every day. This is what I said I was going to do. I'm going to go strike for it.
No, I don't really do that. And I probably should, but I've never really felt the need to.
No, I don't know. I don't think if you haven't felt the need to, Charlie, I wouldn't put that shit on yourself. There is a great, I didn't mean it to come out if it came out that way, but there's a great, I used to study this theologian that told this story about like a professor he had in school, like in seminary, and she had a big mural on her wall that said, do not shit on yourself. And I never forgot that. But yeah, don't put on yourself. Things are working. It's okay. It's great. Any in your story, as you've grown and developed, any books along the way that you've read that have you sort of marked time by, or said, oh my gosh, when I read this, my trajectory changed, or this really influenced the way I think about the world or our industry or anything like that?
That's a tough question. I've always been an avid reader, really devoured books. And as a kid, I loved going to the library and just piling up all sorts of books. So I loved Beverly Cleary and all the Ramona Quimby books. Loved reading Dr. Seuss. And I remember reading a book years ago called The Travels of Jamie McFeeters. And it was a book that was released in 1959. I don't know how I got a hold of it. But it was about an adventure story about a young boy and his father traveling to California in the California Gold Rush. And it struck me as, wow, this is really kind of cool. I'd love to have adventures like this. And I remember it was a huge freaking book. I want to say it was like 600 pages. And it was probably taller than I was at the point. And I read it all. And I remember sticking with it. And I thought, wow, adventures are kind of cool. So I think from there, I've always wanted to have adventures. So maybe the book instilled in me the desire to go out and find things. And nowadays, I really enjoy reading biographies of all sorts. I don't care what it is. I just finished reading Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights, and it's not really a biography in the traditional sense, but it's more like a series of stories about his life and the adventures that he's had and how he started as kind of on Dazed and Confused, a movie which isn't really very good, I don't think, but it created his career, because you watch it and you go, I don't know why Matthew McConaughey just stuck out of this group of people, but he did somehow. Yeah. And so his book is really interesting, and it talks about the wonderful life he leads. I occasionally read a business book or two, but I find I don't have a whole lot of patience for business books. And I don't know why. I think after I read, I still think Who Moved My Cheese? I think it's one of the most overrated business books I've ever read. And I apologize to anyone who loves that book. But I think once you read the first few pages, you kind of got it down. So I learn more from biographies than I do from business books.
I'm with you. But McConaughey's book was, to me, insanity. There was the part I'll never forget about him smoking something and being in a cage with a mountain lion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this man is off the charts in a different world than I am. But that was a totally great book. I think, and I'm with you in a lot of that. There's something about biographies. I just got through almost all of Thomas Edison. I forget who the author is, but it was a lot. But there's a lot of books, like business books or mindset books, that you kind of get without, like, really quick, like Eat the Frog. Like, I didn't read Eat the Frog. Someone told me Eat the Frog was about doing the thing you want to do least as quick as possible. Great. I got it. And, I'm sure there's nuances in there that I missed, but I get that. There's something about story. Like we always come back to, that's why these conversations are so fun, Charlie, because we get to hear someone's story. And there's something about when you read someone's story and you see the things they've done or the risks they've taken or the love they've had or whatever those million things are we learn in someone's story. There's something really motivating and that teaches us, I think, in listening to someone's story.
Yeah. Like, for example, Keith Richards' autobiography. It's not really a business book, but it's about keeping a team together over a span of about 40 years. And how do you keep a team together and excel at the level that the Rolling Stones have? So if you look at it in that light, it becomes kind of a business book. Yeah. With a personal story tied to it, a personal story that's more accessible and interesting. So I kind of gravitate toward those.
I agree.
I guess I have a short attention span, and I need to be entertained in order to learn something.
You and the rest of us. I think goldfish at this point have longer attention spans than humans. I think, if the studies are correct. Kevin Coachman's in the house. Kevin. Yeah. Kevin, our buddy from KCL, Charlie, and the NAFEM team.
Yep. Shout out to Kevin and Eve.
Stinking love it. We got to have dinner with them not too long ago when they were in Denver. So rad. Fun night. Hi, Kevin and Eve. Okay. You, Charlie, are a runner. At what point in your life did you decide, you know what, I want to start running, or I should start running, depending on how you looked at it in the moment? And what keeps it going?
Yes. Well, growing up, my family wasn't very athletic. Exercise wasn't something that was really something that my family did. And around 2000, that approach started to catch up with me physically. And I could feel it. And I felt I had to do something. So I started to, I was actually influenced by my in-laws, all of whom are very athletic. And in fact, they're a well-known family in Indianapolis for their athletic exploits and what they've accomplished. So all of them are runners. And I thought, okay, well, if they could do it, maybe I should give it a go. So I started running on a treadmill a few miles in the morning, right before I started work. And I liked the results. I liked what it did to me. It made me feel stronger, healthier, and more confident. And so here's where a goal setting comes in. I set a goal to run a race called the Big 7 Miler, which is a really brutal hilly course in Davenport, Iowa, near where my parents live. And it's always end of July. It's always hot and muggy, but it's something that I knew from growing up part of my life in that area. I'm not from Iowa, by the way, but did some growing up there. Anyway, so I ran that race in 2003, and I've done it 16 times since. And I learned that I could do it. So the next year I said, okay, I'm going to run the Chicago Marathon. So I set a goal and I ran the Chicago Marathon in 2004. And thankfully, Dee Flynn was there with my family and showed them how to navigate the course and everything. And I will never forget that. So thank you. Years later, I've run probably about 100 races of all kinds. I think I've done about 20 half marathons and 8 full marathons. I don't know if my marathoning days are over, but I'm at the point where it's kind of like I like the process. I like the way it forces me to stay organized, especially with a heavy travel schedule, which I sometimes have. And so I've got to find how to incorporate running or training into whatever I'm doing. And that forces me to pick and choose certain things or prioritize or wake up at 4:30 in the morning, whereas I might not, and go run on the Capitol Mall or wherever I am and do that and see the city in a different way. So it's helpful. I don't necessarily love running, but I love the end results. I love the way it makes me feel, and it makes me feel healthier and more confident. And like there's sometimes nothing that I can't do. So that's important.
Charlie, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Gosh, if we all had something like that in our lives that made us feel like, man, if I can do this, what can't I do? I can take on the world, or whatever challenge I have in my life. I figured out how to do this, so I can certainly translate over into this other area of life.
But isn't that the trick? You're supposed to find something that brings you passion or brings you a challenge. And so once you find that, then it's your job to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do in order to make me feel better about myself. I'm going to feel more confident. If it's baking, if it's going out and bird watching, who cares? Find it and do it.
True words have never been spoken, Charlie. I love it.
Yeah.
Note taking. Everybody should be note taking right now.
Yeah.
It's I read a study not too long ago that they were studying decision making. It was Stanford, I think, that did it in people that struggled with like anxiety, depression, and they had like half the group make a decision, and it was whatever, and then half the group they had study a past success or something that brought them confidence or belief in themselves.
Yeah,
and they ended up making better decisions than the other group just by remembering things they had accomplished, things they'd overcome, successes in their life, and how that changed their ability to make a decision right now, just remembering things of the past.
Yeah. I'm not a good runner. I'm not a fast runner. I'm just someone who is able to say, okay, on this date, I will complete the X event. And then you plan to do it. So I guess going back to your point, I do chart out a plan and post it on my file cabinet at work and carry it around with me. So I've got it in a printout. And then I check off when I'm done with that week. And so I know whether I'm on path to accomplish that goal or not. And I make adjustments throughout. Am I religious to it? Yeah, sometimes not. Do I worry about nutrition? Not really. But at least it gives me something that I know I need to do in order to make myself feel better.
Would you, I love all of that, by the way. Here's what I find in my own life when it comes to exercise, because I don't necessarily love exercise. If I have something I'm working toward that I'm mildly terrified could kill me, or I will just totally fail at or be embarrassed by, then I will I will get her done. I will do the things. When I sign up for a triathlon, I'll work hard to make it happen, or a 10-mile race or whatever it is. If I don't have something I'm shooting for, I find myself less likely to get up and make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I find too.
Good for you. I love it. Okay, your kids are out of the house at this point in your life. But when you were growing up in your career, you had 2 boys.
Yep.
And were figuring out work, and you were figuring out life and how to be present at both and feel successful in both of those and be engaged. What, I don't know, any lessons you took away from that part of your life that you would offer many of the people watching in our community who have young kids or newborns or wherever we're at in that stage?
I admit I made a lot of mistakes as a parent. There are days when I felt, okay, you did good, kid. Then there are other days when you just think, boy, you screwed that up. So it's part of being human. I like the fact that both of them are contributing in their own ways to society, and they're developing as healthy human beings with good relationships and out doing their things. And so in that case, I guess Patty and I, my wife, were successful. So I'm proud of both of them. They really do bring a lot of joy.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that'll be a fun day when... Do you hear an echo in me, by the way?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
It came on all of a sudden. I don't know why.
Yeah.
That'll be a fun day as my daughter's 13. I think she's thinking about getting a job at 14 or 15 as they start, these things on their own and contributing in ways and all this kind of stuff. To see them grow up. I think that's fun when your kids are doing their thing and when they're independent and making life choices that are generally life-giving and, positive steps. I think that says a lot. And there's a lot of days I will echo your point, and I appreciate your honesty in that. There's a lot of moments I have where I think, oh man, there's a therapy bill for my kid, or, like that, however I handled that. Let me just give you $150 right now, kiddo. And, in 10 years, when you realize what just happened, then, this is for that session. But there's a whole lot of both, I think, in parenting and figuring out how to do that as well as we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's no manual. It's just a matter you gut it out and you make choices. There are some days that were tough. And when we first moved out here, we were both working downtown, moved out here being the suburbs of Chicago. And we were both working downtown and taking the train. And so we'd get up at, 5:30 in the morning and take the kids to daycare where they were still in their, the clothes they slept in. And we would trade who would come and pick them up. And it wasn't easy, but you get through it. And you realize that all those different things that you do helped make those little people turn into, hopefully, fully functioning adults. And thankfully they have. So it's a good ride.
Ben is on. Ben from Florida. Ben, hope you're great, brother. I think you were maybe in Puerto Rico for Thanksgiving. So hope you're great. Gail Swain is on. Michelle Callahan is on. Bolt is on. Drew's on. Hi, everybody. Really great to see you. Remember, don't forget, if you've got a question for Charlie about his story, about what he's doing now, you are welcome to ask in the group. We'll throw it up and make sure that he hears that. When we talked the other day, I learned that you volunteer for Honor Flight Chicago. Mm-hmm. And this is a passion of yours, something that you enjoy serving in and giving to. Tell us about Honor Flight Chicago, how you learned about it, and what do they do and why do you love it so much?
Sure. Honor Flight is a national program, and its mission is to honor and thank veterans of all stripes. And it really is designed or centered around flying those veterans to Washington, D.C. for a day of honor, where they tour the monuments and they're met with dignitaries and they're given the royal treatment. And then at the end of the day, they're flown back, in this case, back to Chicago, and it doesn't cost them a dime. It's all done on volunteers and support contributions from the local area, et cetera. And so I work with the Chicago chapter, and it was recommended to me by a fraternity brother in 2012. So I've been working with them for about 10 years. And he suggested, hey, you should really get involved with them. So I did. And during flight season, my role is flight season is from April through October. My role is to interview one veteran each month and to help tell their story in a brief biography. And the veterans tell me stories that sometimes they haven't even told their own families. So it's a privilege I don't take lightly. And it's an incredible honor to talk to these people and relay their stories. I've interviewed about 25 veterans, men and women, and some of my favorite stories are in some cases really subtle ones. When I say subtle, it can be something simple like I noticed when I started interviewing the World War II vets, they dropped everything they did and they answered the call without question. And to some degree, Korean War vets, similar. When we get to the Vietnam War vets, they felt more obligated and they felt as if people didn't appreciate what they did. So to them, the honor flight experience is much more meaningful, and it's almost like a catharsis for this group of people who felt that no one cared about what they did. Some of my favorite ones were two brothers climbed a hill in Hawaii one bright Sunday morning, and they watched the Japanese planes attack Pearl Harbor. And one of those boys went and served in the Korean War a couple of years after that. And that was an incredible experience to share with him. Another soldier told me the story about his family escaping Lithuania during World War II when the German army was coming down one side of the road and his family was evacuating the country on the other side. And a few years later, as an enlisted soldier, he was sent back to Lithuania as a U.S. Army infantryman to serve in that country, which incredible story. I met a Korean War vet who told me about his endurance. He was captured as a POW and held for 3-4 months. And during that interview, we would talk for a while, and then we would sit in silence, and we wouldn't say anything. And then we would start up the conversation again. And for him, it was a very difficult time to tell me the story of what he went through and his strength. And he didn't even realize how strong the guy was. I mean, it was an incredible story. But my all-time favorite, and this is one that I will never, ever forget, is this fella who lives in Lisle, not just a mile or two away from me. And he was a World War II inductee, or he enlisted, actually, I'm sorry. And he was originally going to be an infantryman. And during one day out on maneuvers, his commanding officer took his rifle away and said, "You're now a medic." And so he learned to be a medic through on-the-job training and was captured by the German army and was a POW for about 3-4 months toward the end of the war. And at one point in this experience, he was saved by a group called the 442nd Regiment, which is a group of Japanese American Army soldiers. And what's interesting about this, and something that I'll never forget, is he mentioned the 442nd. And I said, I know that group. And he said, "How do you know that group?" And I said, "Because my grandfather, my grandpa Al, was a major in the Army, and his job was a training officer for the 442nd. And he sat up straight and he couldn't believe what he was hearing. And it struck me that hero who was sitting across from me was probably there because of something that my grandfather did or taught. And it left me to realize how connected all of us are in some small way. But man, that was a really powerful experience. So I find honor flight to be one of those humbling experiences that I really enjoy, because I get to go and use my skills as a somewhat journalist, get these stories out and tell them. And Kevin Coachman commented earlier that the stories are awesome. All I do is I just put them together. I let the veterans tell their stories, and I'm just a mouthpiece for what they have to say. just some incredible stuff. And I really do thank them for what they've done.
Wow, Charlie, how cool is that? There's Drew as well. Look at this. Do you know Drew Madden?
I don't. I don't.
Drew volunteers with Honor Flight. Drew,
good deal. Yeah.
Well done. Thank you. I love it. Charlie, the stories, again, we talk about the power of story and the things you remember and the realizations we have.
Yeah.
What, I'm trying to think here. Is it those realizations? What's the greatest gift for you when you interview these folks and you travel with them to DC and you watch them feel celebrated and experience something that's pretty profound for them? What's the greatest gift in it for you?
Well, I don't get to travel with them. That's actually limited because they save the seats on the plane for the veterans and the medical people. Each one has a medical person traveling with them to make sure they're comfortable and safe. So I'm a rear, I'm a support person. But the incredible gift that these folks give me is every once in a while, they will tell me that the story that I wrote is something that they shared with their families and something that they couldn't articulate. And so whatever I was able to do in 300 words is important to them. And it made a difference in their lives because they were able to communicate it or share it or speak about it with their families. And like I said earlier, some of their families hadn't heard these stories before. Like the Korean War vet who was a POW, he didn't tell his family some of the stories. And I left a lot of it on the cutting room floor because a lot of it was brutal and not necessarily something that you want to repeat. But what his initial message was something where his family didn't realize how strong he was. He was probably about 97 pounds soaking wet, but he was probably one of the toughest men I've ever met. And he is retired now, but he's one of those people that you just remember, and that's an incredible gift. So those are the things that are left with them, that I had a moment with them, that they shared it with their families, and they were proud of what they accomplished.
I think too, the cool thing from an outsider's perspective that you offer them is obviously this situation, you're a person who creates a safe enough place for them to rehash things maybe they haven't thought of in 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, whatever long it's been. Yeah. That, again, things that were so big they didn't tell their family, but they felt safe enough to tell you. And that's, what a privilege. And, I would tell you, thanks for serving and giving those men and women that safe place to relive some of that.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
Outside of running, which makes you feel proud, makes you feel a certain way, to know you can accomplish other stuff. When you're not serving NAFEM, doing what you do, what brings you joy? What fills your cup? Any hobbies, any things you love when you're not, maybe it's reading the biographies and things like that, but is there anything else in your world that are your go-tos?
Well, yeah, my family's my go-to. If I didn't say that, I'd be foolish and stupid, because I love who they are and what they do. I appreciate my wife, and whether she does something cool or something really exciting, I'm proud of what she's accomplished. I'm proud of what my kids accomplished and what they're going to do. And that brings me joy. So Patty and I are both from large families. I'm one of 6 kids and Patty is one of 10. So we never fail to have places to go or people to see. And unfortunately, they live in different states. So we were always traveling to Iowa, where a lot of my family lives, and Indianapolis, where all of her family lives. And so that brings me joy. That's kind of a hobby, is to stay up on all these people, because when you multiply 6 kids and 10 kids, you get a lot of stories, and you get a lot of more stories when you have nieces and nephews involved. So there's a lot to follow.
That's fun. What a great way. You get to travel new places, you get out of where you live, and you get to connect on all these stories and see people. What a fun, great way to find joy.
Yeah, pretty cool.
What oftentimes we learn what we're capable of by
Mhm.
pushing through something that was challenging.
Mhm.
Was there any moments in your life, professionally, personally, a challenge that you overcame that sort of taught you, you know what, I can handle big things?
Well, like everyone else, I think the past 2 years have been a major challenge, and I've learned a lot about myself through it. Uh, Last year, 2000 was a very intense, uncertain time, both personally and professionally. I mean, I didn't know if we were going to have a job, because the whole industry was crumbling, and the whole society seemed to be crumbling. I think back to March 2020, when we were sure what was coming down the road. It was a scary time, and so I learned how to handle a lot of stress, and I learned that I could handle a lot more than I assumed, but I can only handle so much at one time, because, like most humans, you kind of have a point where you say, yeah, I got to check out. And so you do. You go outside and sit for a while, or you go play cards, or you go run, walk the dog, something like that. Thankfully, things have settled down a little bit in 21, and we've all learned to live with things a little bit better, but life is still uncertain, a little uneasy. And so it's a challenge. I think if I think about what my kids are going through, they don't know what life is going to be like on the other side of COVID, and none of us do. I've said before during meetings, and this is probably not really appropriate, but I'm going to say it anyway because I say stupid things. 2020 was kind of a dumpster fire, and other people say a dumpster fire for sure. I think 21 is like a paper bag of dog poo on your front doorstep. And our job is to try and resist stamping it out with as much vigor and aggression as we possibly can. But through it all, you got to find bright spots and try and approach it with as much humor as you possibly can. Because if you can't, then it's going to overwhelm you. And so that's kind of how I try and do it. I have a very quirky sense of humor. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm cynical, and I admit those faults, or qualities sometimes. And to some degree, those things help me get through, because I realize that, okay, if I can view 2019 or 2020 as a dumpster fire and 21 as a dog pile in paper bag, if that helps you get through, then go for it, man. Oh well.
Charlie, I wouldn't. I don't view that. I mean, certainly at any point, we try things and hopefully, things land, and sometimes they don't land. But I love the power of humor. Kevin Coachman says humor helps. It
Yep.
really does.
Yeah.
If you can spin anything into something that makes you smile,
Mhm.
or a group of people around you smile, I
Yeah.
think that's a huge win, because laughter is disarming. Number one, it's a little bit calming. I think it releases dopamine in the brain, or one of those happy chemicals. I forget which one.
Yeah.
And fights adrenaline and stress. And when you can do that, I think you make better decisions. I think you connect with people more. I mean, there's people who, laughter really does connect people. If you can
Yeah.
laugh together.
Yeah. It also helps you take a pause, and it makes you realize that, things may seem kind of bleak, but you know what? If you can take a moment and find some little small shred of humor in the face of something that really looks ominous, maybe it's not that bad. A good story is that in 2002, I was on a sailboat race to Mackinac, and Dee would know this. I'm not really a sailor, but the race from Chicago to Mackinac is a long race. It takes like 3 days. And I was sailing on a boat without a whole lot of comfort on it. And we were caught in a really, really vicious storm that it capsized the boat twice. And so we were lucky to get out alive. But throughout it, I was sitting there and thinking about different things that had happened. And it's like, I thought I saw a hummingbird come in the middle of this awful storm when this oar boat was coming barreling down at our boat. And I thought that was the funniest thing I ever could think of. And I don't know why, But I mean, it just illustrates, it's like you either got to be nuts or it's a coping mechanism. And I'd like to think it's more of a coping mechanism.
I think it's a great one. There's a lot of people cope a lot of ways, Charlie.
Yeah.
And if you can do it with laughter, I'd say that's a pretty darn healthy one.
Well, I wasn't laughing the whole time, but
Sure.
yeah.
It became like, I remember as a kid, my dad taught me the power of laughter. Anytime something bad would happen to me physically, one time, like I pulled, this was because of bad studs for sure. Like there was like a weight set in the wall that like screwed into the wall and you could like pull down on the weight set and the dumbbells come up or whatever. And I pulled the thing out of the wall, clocks me in the head. And, he makes some joke about how I'm obviously now going to go as Frankenstein to Halloween because I had to get stitches in my head and all this kind of stuff. And there's something powerful about that and makes you make light of it. I remember Eric, what's his name? The first blind gentleman to climb Everest, Weinheimer.
Okay.
He lives outside of Boulder in Golden. And he told a story at an industry conference, actually, where they were climbing Everest and it was so miserable that they created something called positive pessimisms.
Okay.
And a positive pessimism is when you take two really crappy things and you put them together. So as an example, they're climbing Everest and the dude was like, oh my God, it is so cold, but at least it's windy. And so you take these two crummy things, you put them together and you can't help but smile. And so when like it's really brutal, here's an offering to everybody. Take the two, but at least it's boom. And, you've got yourself a little smile.
I'm going to write that down. That's good advice right there.
Positive pessimisms, baby. We use it all the time.
Worth the price of admission.
There you go. I love it. If you knew we got a few minutes left. If you knew you couldn't fail at something, is there a profession you would have done or something you would try at NAFEM or anything like that? If you knew there was zero chance of failure, anything you'd always wanted to try or do?
I think it'd be fun to be Anthony Bourdain without the tragic ending, of course. But I just to play in that role or that sphere that he did, where he developed a role and a persona that reached beyond food service and that of a chef. And he helped people understand and plant a desire to explore their cultures. And if I could do that, or if I could do it without failing, I'd give it a try, because I think it would be incredibly instructional. I don't think anyone could ever do it as well as he did. But boy, wouldn't that be fun to give it a try or give it a roll. So that's just something that I think I would like to try.
I love it.
Yeah.
Define for you, what does success mean? How would you define success? A successful career, whatever you want to call it.
Well, to me, I think success is feeling like at the end of the day that you wrung everything out of the day that you possibly could, and no matter what it is. I mean, it's almost like if I come home at the end of the day, or if I'm working from home and I'm done with my work schedule for the day, and I feel like, wow, you really did a good job, or you knocked it out of the park, then that to me feels like success. When I feel inside of myself that I did everything I possibly could and I've got nothing left, that feels like success to me. It probably sounds pretty trite, but it's just a way of looking at things and going, okay, you had a lot you had to do, or you had a couple things you had to do, but you did them well. And even if there's no one there to celebrate it with you, I don't care some days. I mean, it's a matter of just being able to look at it and go, you know what, I'm proud. And if I can sit there at the end of the day and say, I'm proud of what I accomplished or what the team accomplished, that really means a lot. So that feels like success.
I think it's a great definition. I think this morning's quote card in the group was, I forget who said it, but no one who ever gave his best ever regretted it, giving their best. Yeah. And I think that speaks to your words. And and I resonate with that. I hate this idea of ending a day with regret, like wishing I'd given more or could have been more or could have whatever that is. I love that. I love how you look at it. Charlie, a couple things. We've got 4 minutes left, and I want to honor your time and everybody's time. Everyone, thank you for watching, by the way, and connecting with Charlie and I. This has been awesome. We will put this on YouTube so you can see it after the fact, and grateful for all of you and your engagement and your questions. I want you to know that what you're doing matters. You talked about the thing I think you said, I'm paraphrasing, and maybe I'm totally missing the boat, but I think I'm somewhat on the boat. The thing that you like most about your role is that you get to make a difference. You and your team get to do things that affect people in positive ways. And I want you to know you're doing it. Some of your friends, some of our mutual friends reached out to share words of what you've meant in their lives and to them. And I'm going to read them to you and make you squirm. I don't know that it's going to make you squirm. Maybe it won't. But these are the funnest moments. And because I don't know how often we really ever have these conversations with anyone where people really say, here's what you mean to me and who you've been to me. And so our buddy, you and I share a mutual friend. You probably don't know this, in Chris Scott with Howard McRae.
Yeah, love Chris. Love Diane.
Chris and Diane.
Tell you a cute story, but we're running out of time.
Well, we can always run out of time. It's okay. Here's what Chris said. Diane, my wife, and I had the pleasure of traveling with Charlie to Washington, D.C. on behalf of Howard McRae, a small family business, and NAFEM. We were invited by the SBA to speak on behalf of small businesses and the effects of tariffs. Charlie was instrumental in arranging this forum for us and introduced us to Congress people and senators. He had a lot of valued contacts in D.C. that are so important to NAFEM and many small manufacturer businesses.
Yeah.
Charlie helped coach us through the process, was a great mentor to us during this time. We're often too busy with the day-to-day challenges, but I've always been able to call Charlie or email him, and he gets back to us so quickly with the information we need. Diane and I had the opportunity to have dinner with Charlie in D.C., and we got to know each other a lot more than just NAFEM and NAFEM membership relationship. We really enjoyed the dinner and got to know each other better than before. He is friendly and kind and never too busy to help us. I know Diane and I and Howard McRae can depend on Charlie for information, guidance, and most of all, friendship. He's someone we treasure as a resource, and I wish we used him more often. They're like, we need to keep calling, keep asking.
Yeah. If you get a chance, go visit Howard McRae. It is worth the visit. It will impress you in what they do in their business. It's astounding and well worth the trip.
Heck yes. I've been there. We rep them years ago, right in Philly. And they've got a great family-run business with a cool kind of niche area of the market that they serve. And they're doing great. I got to catch up with Chris last week, which was really great. Wade Kaler from FCSI. Charlie is such an amazing guy. He is a rock star, in fact, always full of knowledge and willing to take the time to have meaningful conversations. He's so much fun to share a meal or a cocktail with. And I love making him laugh with my usual too honest assessment of all things food service related.
Yeah, that's Wade.
If there is a better, more genuine guy in the industry, I have yet to meet them.
Love Wade.
How cool. Our buddy Rob Connolly.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie is seriously fun. What I mean is he takes his job very seriously. He's very conscientious, but he doesn't take himself too seriously. He has a great sense of humor, and he is fun to be with in any situation. Whatever we're doing, if you are with Charlie, you know you're going to have fun. Over the years, he's been has been the one to trade looks with across the room during some meeting as we smile at the absurdity of some situation. We are brothers in humor. But you also know that you're with a pro. He's smart, he's prepared, and thoughtful. He has great experience and insights, and NAFEM and the industry are so fortunate to have him. We also have a shared passion in running. It's always so fun for us to go on a run together or talk about our next marathon.
Yeah.
There is so much to love about Charlie. And the best is his deep love and care for his family. They are number one, which I think makes Charlie number one.
Thanks, Rob.
Rob, thanks for sharing. Wade, Chris, thanks so much. And last is from one of our favorite people, Deirdre Flynn.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie has been my colleague, my confidant, coach, and partner in crime for 30 years. He's been committed to NAFEM, to representing and advancing food service equipment supplies manufacturing, and designing and implementing the programs and services we offer to help NAFEM members the opportunity to grow and prosper. He's a smart, caring, and compassionate leader with a wonderfully good sense of humor. Yes, our condos in hell expand every year, and we've got quite a compound these days.
Yep, it's growing.
We've been through all work and life's joys and sorrows together, and it's been a privilege to serve NAFEM side by side with him every day.
Yeah.
Wow. You guys have something special. It's fun to hear these stories and the people you've connected with and the lives you've impacted.
Yeah. There's another story.
Yeah. We'll bring that up in a minute.
Yeah, about D and I at NAFEM in 1991, when Ira Kaplan stood behind each one of us and told stories. We've told this many times, but he stood behind D and I at this dinner, and he put his hands on our shoulders and he said, "This is the future of NAFEM." And 30 years later, we're still here, which is really pretty wild. And I'm proud of that, and I hope she is too.
I have a feeling. She is. This is our friend Louise.
Oh, God.
Louise, in a very male-dominated industry, Charlie has excelled in a majorly female office at NAFEM. Any tips for doing well in that atmosphere? Any tips for doing well as a man in a largely female group of coworkers, I'm guessing?
Absolutely. And this I learned from a taxi driver in Atlanta. Keep your tater trap shut.
Keep your tater trap shut.
I mean that with all sincerity and humor, etc. But honestly, there are times when I need to understand that I've met my limit. So I appreciate the opportunity to work with the ladies that I do, because they are smart, they're sharp, they're funny, and I enjoy working with every single one of them. But yeah, there are moments when I just need to say, I'm out of my element. Time for me to shut up and go home.
Just listen a little bit, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Listen more, do less.
Yeah, I'm with you. Deirdre Flynn, this is D. You bet you're the best. 30 years would go by with a blink of an eye.
Wow, isn't it? Yeah, true story.
Amazing. David Maxwell, thanks, guys. David, thanks for joining us. David, Louise, D, Rob, Wade, Chris, Bolt. This has been an absolute Connor, Taz, Kevin. So many fun friends. It's been really great to be with you all. Who's this? This is Deirdre. He doesn't have it easy, but he represents the gender well. He's the most fashionable.
Fair enough.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Hey, Food Service Power Plant, another great night. The stories were, as always, as they always are, story moves us. Mm-hmm. We got to hear stories about service and people that Charlie learns from, and ways that he's impacted from veterans, and ways he serves and lifts up, ways he gets to contribute to the industry, the importance of leaving it all on the field, where pride is found in him, and how Charlie defines success, which I think is a beautiful way of doing so. I remember calling Charlie ahead of time and saying, "So I hear you love running." He goes, "I wouldn't say that, but I do it because it brings me this."
Yeah.
I think I don't think I'll ever forget that, because it showed, there's things you love and there's things we do. We love them because we love them. There's things we do because of how they make us feel, whether we enjoy them or not. They create something in us that creates greater opportunities for growth or success or passion or whatever that is. So everyone, I hope you got some great notes. A couple things. First, this will be on YouTube after the fact. Go check it out. You can send it out to anybody. We have a whole channel with all 57, 8, whatever it is, conversations with different industry leaders. You can check them all out, where they share stories and moments and insight, etc. The other thing I would say is, Dee, thank you for joining us. The other thing I would say is, if you are in a place right now where we talked about do not should on yourself, Charlie and I tonight. If you're in a place where you're struggling right now, don't say I should be somewhere else. I should be doing better. Stop shitting on yourself. Where you are is wherever you are, for a whole bunch of reasons that totally make sense. I think back to Tim Irie when he was struggling back in his career and going through some depression, anxiety. And the answer was, of course you are. Of course there's a reason why he's struggling. So if you're feeling that right now, know that we all go through experiences like that. You're not alone. You've got a community of food service people, whether it's in our food service power plant community, but even, if you're a NAFEM member, if you're a MOVSI, if you're a FIDA, CFESA, whatever it is, FCSI, you've got a team around you and people who inevitably want to support you and have your back. So reach out to someone that cares about you, someone you trust, someone that you can share a couple things with. You can always reach out to me or any of the members that have shared conversations. We're all here to support you and help you. And just know that you're not in it alone. Kevin, thanks for joining us. Charlie, thanks again, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody, have a great night. See you next time.